Hello everyone and welcome back to the final session today of PEX Live Digital Process Automation and Low Code Automation. We're joined here with FlowForma, Shay and Paul, who will be delivering a presentation on how Nipro Europe Group companies is transforming business processes across 26 locations. Now this session is going to be quite interactive. We've got a few poll questions ready for you, so please do get involved with the engagement there. If you do have any questions as well, include them in the Q&A box and we'll take them all at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, over to you, Shay and Paul.
Hi guys, just to give you background on ourselves, my name is Shay O'Connor, I'm Head of Solutions with FlowForma, and alongside me today is Paul Stoll, as our Product Strategist within FlowForma also. This case study, as Jennifer was laying out, is a case study on a very interesting client of ours, and a lot of organizations are going through or even just looking at digital transformation. This organization has been doing it for a while now, and we have gone to start. So it seemed to be a very good topic and timely topic to introduce to you guys and to go through all the steps that Nipro found themselves facing from the start. Just want to go through a list of questions with Paul. Paul is the expert in the area with Nipro, has been closely associated with the project over the last while. And I just want, from a background point of view, Paul, if you could let the guys know just a little bit about Nipro Europe.
Yeah, certainly. Nipro Europe is part of a larger group, Nipro Japan, and they're a leading global healthcare company established in 1954. So they're quite an established company. They've got over 56 locations worldwide, and as Shay was saying, 26 in Europe. There are wide-ranging medical-related business that focuses on medical devices. But they have over 1,000 products in their product catalog. So really quite an extensive range of products, dealing in all sorts of areas, including, as I said, medical devices, but also packaging services as well, distribution and so on. They employ 3,500 people across multiple sites in Europe, but they have over 29,000 employees globally. So a significant company, I guess, in the medical devices sector.
Yeah, the guys there were always interested in digital transformation. I mean, I know they investigated a few options. I mean, it's a vast array out there, but from the get-go, they had obviously got a list of challenges that they wanted to address. Can you go through some of those? What were the challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. They primarily wanted to try and standardize their processes. So they have 26 sites in Europe, and they wanted to have standardized processes across all of those sites so that every employee was working to the same KPIs in the same manner and so on. They also wanted to reduce paperwork. They had a very significant amount of paperwork. They had an established ERP system in the background, but still many of their processes were executed by using pieces of paper, email chains, tracked on spreadsheets and so on. And they were over-dependent on those email chains. So if an email chain didn't continue through to the right resource, for example, the process was broken, and it was very difficult to track all those processes and ensure those processes were efficient and executed efficiently. And they didn't have any visibility of the processes, so they didn't know how many processes were in action at one time, and of course where those processes were at any particular point in time. They didn't have any dashboarding, they didn't have a system in the background driving the process to completion, and all of that led to delays. So it's particularly in sign-offs, where you've got many processes involve approval stages, and if those approvals are not being approved, it's a process bottleneck and the process is being held up. So really there was a lot of delays in relation to sign-offs, and they were very hard to track. It was very hard to know that a process was stalled at a particular point in time. So it's very difficult to recover from that.
the list there, Paul, though, I mean, it's safe to say that all of these challenges, they are quite consistent across the board with any organization who is relying on their inbox or relying on manual, basically non-digitized processes. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the FlowForma's customer base, these problems are common to most of our customers. They're looking to digitize, they're looking to transform, and they want a way of doing it. They want a way of getting rid of the paper, tracking those processes, understanding as well the metrics in relation to the processes, are they performing on time and so on. So yes, absolutely, Shay, these are very common problems.
Now, just from a progression, okay, we know what the challenges are. We know that the guys wanted to get something going, but so what were their requirements? These guys, I know, I mean, Nipro, Japanese parent company, and we were dealing with the guys obviously further afield, but they're great guys for detail. And we know that from the projects that we've dealt with them with. So they would have drawn up requirements at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. They had a specific strategy in terms of the way they wanted to take the company. They were absolutely very detailed in their requirements of the product that would meet their needs to fulfill that strategy. One of the big things for them is they wanted to move to the cloud. They had a lot of on-premise systems, and they wanted to move to the cloud. And as part of that move, they wanted to introduce Office 365, make better use of, Microsoft 365 as it is today, make better use of Microsoft 365 and use that tool to drive productivity. And they wanted a DPA platform that sat on top of that would execute processes and interact as needed with that environment. So it really was key to them that they had that they were to move to the cloud, and their chosen provider was Microsoft, and they wanted to make sure that whatever product that they got in for DPA would live comfortably in that environment. The second thing that they wanted was, and this was very important to them, was they wanted a no-code solution, because they saw this tool being used by business users to help themselves, to become self-sufficient. And this was critical because they had a large IT service provider that actually did a very good job in maintaining their ERP systems, their core systems. But it was difficult to engage and create projects that would solve many of the process automation challenges that existed in the business. So the way they saw themselves doing that was actually having the business educated to become self-sufficient and build out solutions themselves. And for that, they needed a no-code tool, so that basically the people who were configuring processes would have a minimal digital skill set. They might be spreadsheet users or whatever, but they wouldn't need to be coders or developers, and you wouldn't have that dependency on IT that you previously had. And what that enabled them to transform at pace. And that brought us on to the third requirement. They needed to be able to scale. It wasn't good enough to build like one digital solution or digitize one set of paper, if you like. They needed to do that at scale because they saw that was where they would win big. If you digitize a paper-based solution, you're going to make a certain amount of efficiency gains, of course, but really where the big win is if you can digitize 100 processes. And you might think 100 processes, that's an awful lot. Well, in most organizations, and certainly in an organization the size of Nipro, there's many more than 100 processes out there that are inefficient, that are using paper, they're being tracked on spreadsheets and so on. So there's lots of opportunity. And they wanted to maximize the benefits they could get from that. Yeah. Sorry, Shay.
Yeah, and one thing I remember you saying about this one was about the document generation capabilities. That the guys basically wanted to have to do a process, go through a digital process, but no reworking, because that's, it sort of goes against the grain of when you digitize, but no reworking. So alongside all of your processes, you had to generate the documents, the supporting documentation for their industry and have it filed correctly and so on.
Absolutely. Indeed, there was a need for record keeping that aligned with the industry, the medical devices industry. So it's quite strict and exact in terms of the records that need to be kept. So the digital process automation tool needed to have that ability to generate those documents and file them away in the correct locations. And also, of course, issue out communications at relevant points and keep an audit trail, etc.
Yeah. I mean, just going by the challenges and the requirements. So we know that during that selection process, that enabled Nipro to filter down to what platforms they could choose. So it was easy for them to see that they could omit certain platforms pretty much straight away because of the no coding scalability scenario and the DocGen, all the roll into one.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked at many platforms out there, and really it was that kind of way FlowForma links it all together, links document generation and management, links data capture, and links workflow all together in one tool that makes it so easy to use. That combined with this no-code element makes it very intuitive for those business users to use. Unlike many other products that have separate workflow engines, separate document management, and so on. And then that business user needs to figure out how to link all that stuff together. Well, if you have a single user interface, a single tool to do that all for you, it really makes it easier and faster. So it really has efficiency gains in terms of the time it takes to actually build out and digitize a process. And that's very important for business users. Business users don't have a whole lot of time for this kind of stuff. So you have to have a tool that's very efficient, that enables you to build things very quickly. And that's what FlowForma does.
Great. So we're going to move into a poll question, just to add a little element of engagement. So please do submit your responses in here. We're asking, what are your requirements for a digital process automation tool? Is it integration with existing systems? Is it the ease of implementation, or the usability of the tool for business users, or standardized processes across your enterprise? Now, I know Nipro, as you mentioned, actually used it to help make it more intuitive for business users. So let us know if you have a similar response, or let us know if it's something else, and submit your responses in there. Just give you a couple more seconds before we display the results. Great to see a few of you voting in there. All right, and so it looks like there's 33% of you who has mentioned it's integrating with existing systems, 25% of you both using for the usability of the tool for business users and standardized processes across the enterprise, and then 16.7% with an ease of implementation.
Just as part of today's presentation and webinar, the Global Procurement Research Manager from Nipro just gave us a testimonial or a quote that we thought was good to include. Customers like to talk about their implementation, especially when something like this is so successful. You know, it's something to be proud of. And Dennis is particularly proud of the work that the whole team did over a period of time. Now that we know the sort of path that the guys went through in regards to assembling their challenges, going through their requirements, and then obviously selecting the platform of choice for this, just what did they start doing? So where did they start digitizing in the organization?
Yeah, well, they looked at a few different areas, but I guess the first place they started was marketing, because marketing had a number of requirements for automation, and I guess as many of our listeners today will know, marketing often does not get a lot of attention from IT. So there was lots of marketing requirements that were left in those paper and email chains, etc. So marketing was a key focus point at the outset, to build processes that helped automate marketing, particularly in relation to things like content approval and so on, which I'll talk about in a little later. Also, we then looked at HR, another area that is often left to one side when it comes to digital transformation. It's one of the lower priorities. However, I think the past 12 months has really proven the value of HR with the COVID challenge. And actually there are lots of processes within HR that, lots of interactions with HR that every employee has, that where those processes need to be smooth, and need to be getting the right results. So there's a great opportunity to automate in HR.
To jump in, Paul, I mean, basically what we're seeing here is a large scaling of ownership of a platform where instead of just concentrating on one area, they decided to hit a lot of departments and get everybody digitized.
Absolutely. Again, scalability was key for them. There was lots and lots of opportunity, and they wanted to get as much digitized as possible in the shortest time frame as possible. So yes, indeed, they hit in various different areas, not just concentrating on one, trying to get PlowForma out there as quickly as possible throughout the organization.
Now, and just on that, I'd love to hear, and this is the next question, it's an example of a process that Nipro felt, is a good example of the impact on the organization. Can you go through an example for us?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was mentioning before, marketing were a focus area at the very outset, and they straight away saw an opportunity where they could implement, fine-tune, refine the process for approving outgoing marketing materials. So they had over 416 marketing assets. So think of marketing collateral like brochures and instructions, that kind of thing. And they had a complex process that involved over 8 signatories, so 8 approval stages in the process, including like over the 18 different steps in the process, 8 approval stages. So there was really a great opportunity to introduce a digital process, because as you can imagine, if that's running on an email chain, being tracked on a spreadsheet, 8 approval stages, that's a difficult thing to manage. So it's a great opportunity to digitize that process. And also, in digitizing the process, you're capturing all the data associated with that process. You're managing that collateral in SharePoint as it happens. And you're able to then capture that data and represent that on a dashboard. And that's so critical, so that at any point in time, people could look at the dashboard and see, oh yes, well, this piece of collateral is held up at the moment because there's a problem with one of those approvals and it's stuck at a certain stage. So they were able to look at all of this and see how many of these processes running at a time, exactly where they were being held up, so they could ultimately make those processes more efficient as they, over time, learned more and more about those processes and identified areas where they could be refined.
I can only imagine how many not only emails, but CCs of emails were circulating before they got the process digitized. And I remember a reference from CEO saying, are you telling me that this is going to remove the need for me to be CC'd on everything? But the answer was yes, it was, I'm already bought in.
Absolutely. The emails become a lot simpler. Like actually, FlowForma issues emails, so it can send notifications and so on automatically. And there's no real need to CC people all the time, because FlowForma is managing the processes. It's in safe hands, and you can always look at the audit trail to see exactly what happened to that process. So certainly no need to DC the CEO every time.
Yeah. Just another question, Paul, and this is our last question just on this project. Everybody has different views of how a project can be successful, but what was Nipro's vision of success, and how did they realize that from a digitization point of view?
Yeah, well, a big thing for them was they have 26 sites in Europe, and they wanted to have standardized processes that all those sites would use. All the employees would use the same processes, so that they could be measured in the same way, so that you could see business goals being achieved across the board, and that could be all aligned with your KPIs and so on. So they wanted those standardized processes being used by everybody, and digitizing them was a great way of doing that. The next thing was they wanted that no-code solution, so that basically they could empower their business people to actually digitize themselves, removing the IT bottleneck, removing the IT cost, so that they could actually move, they could scale up and scale up and achieve the digital transformation goals. They also wanted to have that process automation in the background that would actually drive the process forward, that would keep the system productive, keep resources productive, and have that clear visibility, be able to see dashboards where they could know how their operations were performing at any one point in time, and also measure that against KPIs. Ultimately, you're advancing the company's digital strategy. You're actually implementing digital transformation in a way that they would not have been able to do by any other means. It would be impossible to digitize over 100 processes if you were dependent on an IT provider to do that for you. It would just take too long, cost too much.
And as we were often saying, is that when you digitize a process, I mean, users are also educated in that process, and that education is a byproduct of digitization. I mean, you become part of a chain. You're a link in the chain. You can see where you are in that chain, which is we always find that to be a super add-on to digitizing, is that the people are educated in what's involved in each of the processes, instead of just, submitting a form and wondering where it's gone. They actually can see it now. Just on that, we just want to move on to our last poll.
Yep. Let's get this poll up here for everyone to answer. So what would success look like for your organization from automating your workflows? Is it increased efficiency and productivity? Or is it a culture of continuous improvement across the business? Or perhaps it's bottlenecks are found quicker? Or is it improved cross-departmental engagement and communication? I'll just give everyone a moment to respond to this poll. Shay and Paul, what's your prediction on the results here?
Good question. I think the top one, increased efficiency and productivity, is what every organization wants to get. I think that's what probably management would definitely say.
Yeah, I reckon so too. All right, let's push to the results. Okay, so it looks like 6.7% has actually selected the option of a culture of continuous improvement across the business, with actually 50% following behind an increased efficiency and productivity. Let's talk about these results.
Yeah, so management, I would imagine, look for increased efficiency and productivity, but I think people are using the platforms and are in charge of their own departments. Yeah, a culture of continuous improvement is only going to make their life easier. Paul, what do you?
Oh yeah, definitely. My favorite there would have been a culture of continuous improvement. I'm just all about continuous improvement. And one of the great things about the digital process is that you can change it over time. You can see how it's performing. You can see if it's running on as you would expect it to run, or if you've got a problem with it. But having all those metrics on how the processes are running, it enables you to see if things are running more efficiently or not. And then you can change them very easily. And introduce new processes new processes and new process steps and so on very easily as well. So it's very easy to change the process once you've digitized it.
Yeah, once the culture is there, it's so much easier. Yeah. Just from a background point of view, guys, and this is very brief because what we want to do is, Paul, we want to jump into have a peek into FlowForma under the hood. But FlowForma is a global operation. With over 20 countries across the globe, literally going from New Zealand over to the West Coast of the States. We're a Go Microsoft partner, so we're well immersed in the whole Microsoft environment. And we deal with a lot of verticals and a lot of customers, and they usually start off with different use cases and then evolve. But we have, in that list there, we have got customers who have well in excess of 100, 120 processes on the go that they created themselves. We do a lot, and one of the sort of big areas that we deal in the moment are organizations who are very focused on their margins, because it's a flat rate pricing for FlowForma. It's basically you pay one price and it's an all you can eat buffet, then just create as much as you like. But just on final piece on the project and on Nipro's journey, and this is sort of going to tie in with the functionality that's unique from a FlowForma point of view. What's next for Nipro, Paul, in regards to their evolution of their digital transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Nipro want to do is obviously increase, scale out the processes to ensure that they're being used by more and more people, and also implement some key features of FlowForma that's going to make their productivity gains even better. And that includes a mobile application, a Teams application, and a governance application that allows more and more people to become those process owners who can actually go in and digitize.
Come on, show us a bit, Paul. Come on, show us a bit.
I'm going to show it to you right now. So
yeah, because some of those features are they are unique, and the fact that you can create processes and have them automatically rendered for mobile devices and have the process centrally administered is marvelous.
Yeah, Shay. So here's an example of a process, and a process here is just a change request. And what I'm doing is I'm running it inside a browser. So your typical access point into FlowForma is via a browser. You click on a link, you kick off a process or access a process in some way. And this is what a process looks like in FlowForma. Now it has a thing we call the step bar across the top, and that's showing you all the different steps that are in the process. And as you move through the process, the highlighted step changes. So, the current step is always highlighted. And each of these steps is assigned to a resource, and only that assigned resource can go in and complete the work. And the step bar is dynamic. So as you move through the process, you reach decision points. And if you think about a typical swim lane diagram, you'll have decision points, and then you decide to go to this task or that task. That's there in the background, but from an end user perspective, they just see a nice simple linear view of the workflow, and that's dynamic. So as you reach those decision points, the steps are included or excluded from this line, so that the user can quickly see what's happened before, where they are right now, and what's most likely to happen in the future. Of course, that changes as you reach those decision points. You can also change the resources automatically in the background for each of these steps based on the data that you're going to capture. Now, speaking of data, the area below that consists of an electronic form, and that electronic form is dynamic and applies to the current step. So, in this particular process is to change request. The very first step is create a request for change, so I can go in and start filling in this data, which represents the change that I'm going to apply. Now, we support a wide range of data types in FlowForma, so that you can have really simple stuff like a piece of text that you're entering here, but you can also capture things like users and dates and times, and also create tables of information that you can record complex information in. You can even capture things like a wet signature, as literally a picture, if you like. You can also capture geolocations, and there's a wide range of data types that are supported. The form is completely dynamic, so we operate on lean principles that you only see what you need to see. So the system, as you're typing in data, will analyze that data and carry out actions in the background, which might be to display some additional information on the screen. It might be to cut a step out of the workflow because it's no longer required. So we have these things called business rules that are firing in the background, making the screen dynamic, making the workflow dynamic, all based on conditions and based on the data that you're actually capturing in the form. So this end user interface, it's very straightforward, and at the end of it all, you press submit to move the workflow on to the next logical step in the workflow, and the data for that step is presented. It's very intuitive, very easy to use, and as I said, this is the view from the browser. If I were to show you what the mobile app view looks like, so we have mobile apps for Android and iOS, and the mobile app, as you can see, the view is very, very similar. So we've specifically designed FlowForma so that for an end user, whatever access point they're using, whether it's a browser or a mobile app or a Teams interface, it will all look the same. So as we can see here, the mobile app looks very similar. It automatically is designed to work with a mobile touchscreen interface. And that makes it very, very simple to use. And we also include things in here that allow you to do things like capture a photograph from the device and so on. Now, I mentioned Teams there. We also have an app for Teams. And again, when you look at a process in Microsoft Teams, again, same kind of approach. And what this does is, by using a very consistent approach across different devices, it makes the system really easy to adopt and pick up by end users. So when you're digitizing a lot of different processes, they will all have the same kind of structure, no matter what device you're using it from, which is really quite critical. Now, as well as that, that's what the end user interface looks like. We also have a basic dashboard that provides you with information on processes that are, for example, waiting your input and so on. And you can quickly access into these processes to carry out tasks within the processes. But we also have an environment that allows you to look at things like process performance. So in here, I can see the performance of different processes in my environment. Now, in this particular environment, I have a very minimal set of data, but you get the idea that what the system is doing is tracking the execution of the process against benchmarks that you set. So I can say, for example, how long a purchase requisition should take, and is it running on time, and is it running late. In this instance, all my purchase recs are running late, but you can quickly analyze that data dynamically as it happens, so you can see where the bottlenecks are occurring, what's being delayed. Now, I mentioned earlier on in the presentation about the no-code nature of FlowForma. So what does a no-code system look like? What I'm doing now is I'm going into the configuration interface of FlowForma that shows you how you can configure those workflows. So the change request that I popped up later on, this is what it looks like in that no-code interface. We can see a series of steps in the process, and inside the steps we see a definition of all the data. Now, if I want to add in a new step to this process, I click on plus step over here, I type in the name of the step, and then I press save, and it automatically gets added in at the end. I can then drag it up to the appropriate execution point, and in there I can add in some data, add in a question. And what you're seeing here is that the entire system works off a forms-based interface. What does that mean? Well, you don't need to know any code at all. You just need to have an understanding of the logical definition of your process, what steps are involved, what data is involved, what data is captured in every step, and where are documents in the workflow. And just understand that definition, if you like, of the workflow. You can then go in and configure it through this forms-based interface. And as you're implementing these changes, they're automatically reflected back on the forms, so you can quickly see what your change looks like. As I said, support lots of data types, and we also support things called business rules. These are automated actions that happen in the background. So, for example, we can integrate with back-end systems. We can also carry out communications, like sending an email or generating a document. And all of these business rules are very straightforward in the way that they work. If I pick a straightforward one here, how to show a step, that's the way we branch workflow. You can see that we can enter a condition. I can say if something is equal to yes, then I want to carry out this action, which is to, in this case, maybe hide a step. So that's going to remove the step from the step bar. So that's enough about that. There's a lot of detail in there, which we're very happy to show you on a demonstration if you'd like to see that. But to talk a little bit more about the wider features of the system. I mentioned the ability to report on that detail, all that workflow that's occurring. And this is an example here that's showing you some processes that are executed in the area of customer onboarding. So we have some processes set up for customer onboarding here, new customer payment terms and customer complaint. And this is a dashboard that's created using no code that shows me different processes in different statuses. I can see a holistic view of all of the processes that are executing in the area of customer onboarding. Down here, I can see some extended payment terms requests. I can just click on these and jump into them if I want to, and so on. And this dashboard was created in less than 40 minutes. Now, one last thing I'd like to talk about before we finish is we also have a tool we call it FlowForma Governance. And what this tool enables you to do is deploy FlowForma in an organization in a variety of ways. So you can deploy FlowForma sandbox areas for your business users, and then you can have production areas, and the business user can build in the sandbox and then request their process that they built to be moved into production. And then that goes through an IT gate. So many IT departments might be wary of empowering business users to create their own applications, but our governance application allows them to create those sandboxes where business users can work safely, and then IT control the gate that lets a process move into a production environment. So this system is very advanced. It allows you to also set up standardized processes, and then for each of your divisions in your organization, take a copy of those standardized processes and place them in each division. So you can have some control over the development of processes and digitization within the organization. It's really quite a unique feature that you don't see in other products, which makes other products maybe a little bit more difficult to scale, to achieve the scale that you would find with FlowForma. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass you back to Shay to carry on discussion there.
Thanks, Paul. I know it's a lot to take in, and I know that there's obviously you could be hours and hours demoing the whole platform, but it was a great quick insight. I'm just going to pass over to Jen. Is there any questions for us?
Yeah, plenty of questions coming through here. If anyone has any other questions, then do include them in the Q&A box. I'm going to start with one great question here on how long does it take to digitize a process with FlowForma?
Interesting. So I'll answer that, Paul, if you don't mind. I think the best example I can give you is one of our newest customers in the UK. It's a construction company in the UK. And they had 2 of their non-IT people trained up. Now, it only took 2 days of training, but they created in 10 weeks, they created 37 processes. So they digitized 37 processes, decided to go for a big bang effect. In other words, they literally started off with a system. Now, other people or other organizations decide to go like one at a time, but these guys literally went, no, we're bought into digitization. We actually want a full platform. We want a full offering. So they started off with 37. Yeah, and it took them 10 weeks. So you're talking about the difference for a simple process versus coding, anything between 4-6 times faster. So if it takes you a month to create a process by coding, it's going to take you less than a week or 4 days.
Good answer and good to know. All right, and how soon can we expect to see return on investment from a tool like FlowForma?
Again, so we did an analysis of companies recently who, on their first process, that we would call it the obvious process, the first process that they digitized, there's an average of a 37%. Now, I know that the line's 37 process, but it was literally the highest was 60 or 65% improvement in efficiency versus it was 15 was the lowest one. But basically, you're talking about the mid-30s of a improvement in process efficiency. So the return from a time point of view is immediate. Now, sometimes ones that are slower are ones that you have to go back to the end users and they would want changes and so on. So in other words, your preconception of a process isn't exactly the way the process works in real life. And that tends to happen a lot, where you spend so much time trying to get the perfect process put together, and then you deploy it, and then users come back and go, no, I really want this, or I really want that. So getting that interaction, the ability to change that really quickly. You're talking about an ROI pretty much immediately versus digital, or digital versus manual. So, but over a period of time, which is always great to extrapolate, and some of the figures, there's probably no point in quoting them because some of them seem quite unbelievable. And the nice thing is that our customers will reference them. And so if I say it to you, you'll go, well, that sounds like a lot of saving. But when you hear from the customers, then you go, okay, I believe you now. But yeah, so return is pretty much immediate once you digitize.
Okay, good answer and good to know. Victor here from Hallmont is asking, how do you recommend to transfer an existing company business process to FlowForma? Do customers need to redesign them, or are there some integration tools that are provided, such as the ARIS connector or any other sort of integration tools?
Paul, I think that's you.
Yeah, it's really quite simple to build processes within FlowForma. Usually the challenge is to have those processes defined at the outset. But if you have an existing set of processes that are defined, running on whatever platform they're working on, it's really quite straightforward to rebuild them in FlowForma. As Shay talked about earlier on, the time frame that it takes to construct a process from zero, in FlowForma is really very short. So if you have that process defined already, it's very easy to rebuild it. I wouldn't be too concerned about that at all. Really quite a straightforward thing to do.
The one exception on that one is InfoPath. So if anybody is going from InfoPath into FlowForma, we have a migration tool. So that'll convert the framework, the questions, the steps, all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so could we enable our suppliers to input process digitize with the FlowForma tool?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we haven't had time to cover is the ability to engage external actors in your processes. So FlowForma has something quite unique. It's called Engage, that allows external people who are not actually registered in your tenancy, for example, to interact with FlowForma forms. You can send them a unique link, and they click on the link, and then they can open up one step in the process and enter some data. So let's say with supplier onboarding, you could place a link on your public website. They click on the link, fill in a form, press submit, and then goes through into a process internally inside your organization. And that functionality, by the way, also extends to authenticated users. What does that mean? Well, I can send that link to a Google user and say, okay, paulstone@gmail.com is going to carry out this step, and then paulstone@gmail.com, Paul has to actually authenticate into Gmail, and then is presented with the form where they can fill in the form. Again, just a single step in the form in the process. And when they press submit, they're authenticated. FlowForma will check that, and FlowForma will stamp the audit trail that paulstone@gmail.com actually completed this step. So there's really quite a lot of options there with Engage to interact with your suppliers and also your clients, customers, to actually include them in your processes in a way that you wouldn't have done before. In previous terms, you would have always had to send them an email maybe and get back a spreadsheet filled in and then key it all in. Well, now you just send out the link, can be sent out automatically from FlowForma. Click on the link, fill in the data themselves in their own time, and then submit it back into the organization.
Great, thank you for that answer. All right, I'm conscious of time, so I do want to wrap up here. There are quite a few questions that we're not able to get through during this presentation, so the FlowForma team will be sure to follow up with you directly. But before I let you go, Paul and Shay, are there any final words that you want to share with the audience, and maybe some key learning points that they can take away with them today?
Well, just from the experience of dealing with different clients, the only thing I would say is that there's no time like the present. You could spend, like the example of that construction company in the UK, they only engaged with us for the first time last November. Now we have customers, lots of customers still engaging and who are still, and I'm sure that lots of organizations out there are still scratching their head about digital transformation. But these guys just knew it was the future. They knew they had to do it. So they just grabbed it, went for it, and they digitized straight away. And the great thing about having a no-code environment is you can actually prototype as well. So you don't waste any time at all. You get agreement by using FlowForma from a prototyping point of view. None of that's wasted, and you get straight into it. So the only thing I would say is that, yeah, time is of the essence, and there's no time like the present to get stuck into it.
Yeah, I'd concur with that, Shay. I'd say getting started is the biggest challenge. So as long as you can get some initial backing, start small, get the snowball rolling, and then you'll find that once you've proven that this approach works, which doesn't take long at all, you can build momentum and start to scale up, which is really where the big benefits come at the end of the day. And we've got lots of case studies and use cases that show that. show how that works.
Thank you everyone again for joining, and hope to see you all tomorrow.